And I'm going to show you first the WPF project, and then there's going to be a Windows 10 project. So these are two projects that Microsoft provided. I don't pretend to have written these. The first project is basically a text editor. It just allows you to open a file, make edits, and then save them back down. So it's very simple code, no problem. We can get right into it. I'm just going to put a breakpoint in here just so we can kind of see what this looks like. And as soon as I hit start, you're going to see the Diagnostic Tools window open. Before we do that, though, especially if you're running Intellitrace events, you have to actually enable. You actually have to enable the Intellitrace events on your machine. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to come down here and enable Intellitrace. Now, I believe I did. Perfect. So you can see Intellitrace is right there. It's part of the tools. It's right here. So if you come in, you can get to the Intellitrace. You get the you can choose which events that you want to log. So you can see here that I'll make that a little bigger for the people in the back. The Intellitrace events only, or if you want the events plus the call information. The default is events only. I've just left it on the default, so we'll just leave that for now. On the Advanced tab, you can actually see you can set all kinds of crazy, all of your memory stuff if you want, where everything's going to be displayed, lookups in TFS if you want. I haven't bothered with any of that. Most likely you won't have to as well. The other tab that you want to have a look at, though, is the Intellitrace Advanced tab. And this is where you can select what kind of events you want to monitor. So if you're not doing an ASP.NET application, you're only doing Windows 10, you probably wouldn't check off the ASP.NET events box. Or if you're doing nothing with OLADB, you don't care about that, so you would probably not choose the ADO.NET box. Again, you probably want to scope this down to whatever it is you're going to need. But if you're doing Windows 10 development, maybe you want the gestures to be checked off, so you can actually get to those various gestures within your application, so you can monitor and register those. So again, just under tools, options, Intellitrace events, and then there's a bunch of tokens here. So work in the general and the Intellitrace events section. That's where you want to be. The other thing you want to make sure you can do, or before you start working with Intellitrace, is looking at your Debug tab on your project properties, and you want to make sure that you know which one you're in. Are you working in native code, or are you working in just the hosting process? You want to know what kind of code debugging you're doing before you start working with all of this. So just something to keep in mind when you get underway here. So I'm going to go back. I have my breakpoint in place. I'm going to click start. And you can see already here that the Diagnostic Tools has already been launched for me. And I can rescale this, maybe. Oh no! Does not like to be resized, obviously. There we go. Okay, so I can rescale this. I can drag it around. I can pin it. I can put it wherever I wish. All of this is here. If this does not launch for some reason, you can go up to the debug tools, and you can say show diagnostic tools. Again, I'll make this a little bigger. Control-Alt F2, and that will bring up the diagnostic tools window for you. You can already see that I've registered some events over here on the left-hand side, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another, I'll do an F11, and just kind of get another one here. There we go. So this is kind of what the project is all about here, and again, we're not going to spend a ton of time examining the project. It's just more to demo what the Diagnostic Tools window is doing. You can load in a file, you can make changes, and you can drop it back down. But you can already see that I'm logging all of my process memory. If I had events, or if I had multiple events, they would be there, as well as my CPU. If I were to scroll down here, would be pinging as well. But there's nothing here so far. So I'm just going to stop this for the moment, and I'm going to come back in here, and I know I'm going to go to open file. So let's just throw one in here. All right. So I got my open file, and again, I got more events in here. I just want to show you quickly here what this means. You can see that on this events timeline. So this is the kind remember, this is the break events time, or the break events line of the timeline, and this is the Intellitrace events line. So basically, each one of these little code blocks here, and I don't know if you can see them, but each one of these little code blocks, each one of these little diamonds represents events or represents something that's happened along the timeline. This first little code block is me hitting the breakpoint. And how I know that is, see that little red hat? They call them hats. See that little red hat that's over there? That means I've hit a breakpoint, and that's something that I've generated by myself. If I were to step through this and go to the next one, you can see that all of a sudden I got a yellow hat, which means that I've initiated the debugger and I'm stepping through to the next process. So that little color coding thing in there might not think, or you might not think you can see it very well, or you might not pay attention to it, but that's actually a visual cue to tell you what kind of event that's actually on the timeline. So always make sure, so there is one other option which I believe is gray, and gray means everything else. So red is breakpoint, yellow is a step through on a debugger, and gray is, we don't know what it is, we'll just give it the color gray. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at these, because when you start running these processes and you've got multiple chunks of code, you're going to want to know what this means along the way here. If I keep running this, I'll just run this to completion. Basically, I click the open button. I'm going to go to a file to edit. And my file to edit is the lyrics to line over two's hello, because why not? In this application, say I want to make sure that I can add a piece of text and that my text editor will jump to the top so I know exactly, or sorry, that it will remain on the bottom so that I know exactly where the last edit was taking place. If I click save, you can see that it's already jumped to the top. But not only that, you can also see that I've registered a ton of events. I've closed it, I've clicked save, I've accessed the files, I've opened the files, I've done all kinds of information. And on this events timeline over here, you can see I've registered all kinds of things. And again, for the people at the back here, I'll do actually Control 4. Let's do this. The people at the back, you can probably see here, I've registered all kinds of events. Breakpoints, accessing of the files, all this kind of thing. And this is straight out of the box. I've just put a breakpoint in. I've got all this information just by doing this. So, oh yeah, Control 4. If I want to know what's happening here, I can actually go in and I can look at the events timeline, and let's look at that first, and then we can kind of look at the individual events themselves here. So on these events timelines, you can see I've got my breakpoints and all that information. I can actually scroll in here and look at what's all within this section right here. So imagine I've had multiple events. I can take this and I can kind of zoom into this section. And all of a sudden, down here at the bottom, I have one event, which is the breakpoint event. So you can just drag and drop across that events timeline and just start playing with your timelines, playing with your code, seeing what's available in there. If I reset my view, I can actually do this as well. I can go back in. Let's go back over here. If I want to know what's in here, I can actually just start clicking zoom in. And you can see all of a sudden, I'm zooming in and out on that little section. So you can either drag it across the events timeline, or you can zoom in and out as needed here. So that's the event timeline with all of these here. Down here as well, every time, pause this. Let's go back. Every time I make a different event on the event timeline, it actually registers an event in the events table. So you can see I've hit the breakpoint down here. This events table is telling me about the events, where in the, oh sorry, I'll make this bigger, where on the event timeline it happened. So 15 seconds in, or 2.23 seconds in, I hit the breakpoint. The breakpoint has lasted, because I let it go, for 2,157 milliseconds. I'm on this thread, and that's the name of the event, the actual breakpoint. All of this is pertinent information to me. If I want to know, once I start stepping through, how long each event or on the timeline is actually going to take place, I can kind of see, why did that read call take 6 seconds? Or why did that call out to the internet that curl call take 12 seconds or whatever it is. All of that kind of information you can get out of here, and it's all right there for you. One thing I did forget to mention, I wanted to just mention briefly here, the select tools up at the top here, you can actually elect to not show the memory or the CPU utilization graphs if you choose not to. So if you uncheck those checkboxes there, you can get rid of these if you only want the events timeline. So just another neat little trick. You can get rid of those if those are bothering you. You just want to make sure you use all your space for just your events timeline. So down here on the on this list of tables here, I have all of these different events. If I click one of the events, I can actually move between the different threads and see what's actually happened within this text editor. So let me take the open event. You can see on the open event, it actually tells me if the user clicked the button open control to type button with the content of open. So it actually tells me exactly what has happened in this event. The nice thing with this activate historical debugging is I can actually go, it will take me to, oh, because I'm stopped. I'm going to have to return to live debugging. Nope, doesn't like it. Okay, let me go back. I'll open it and then no, pause. I think it was open for too long. Didn't like it. Edit. And save. Pause. And where's the open event? Click save. We'll click the save. No, still doesn't like it. Okay. So basically what should happen, is that it should take me to that line of code. And I'm going to try it one more time, if not, I'm going to go by it. And, wow. Turn to live debugging. It should take me to that line of code as I've opened it here. That's not what I want. So continue, open, continue, let's do this, save, actually let's make an edit, to save, close, sure, and it killed the event. Okay, so I'm not gonna worry about it, I'm gonna roll by it, but basically what should have happened was, it should have stopped the debugger, taken me to the saved event, and allowed me to see the actual code in place at that time. So that's kind of what happens with that events table right there. I'm not going to worry about it too much more. I'm just going to keep going here. The process memory area here is another neat way that you can work with this. You can actually, again, you can choose to drag into one of these events, and we can zoom in, and you can see all about your memory and what's going on with this. And we'll talk a little bit more about process memory in a bit. You can also see down here too that I'm getting all kinds of memory usage in there and there as we keep rolling along here. Memory usage is nice because we can take snapshots, but we'll talk about that in a bit. And you can get CPU usage as well. So that's kind of the intro to the diagnostic tools window. If I was a developer and I wanted to be able to say, fix that problem where I want to remain on the bottom of my page here when I made my edit. So on the bottom of my file, I want to remain there. If I go here, I'm going to click open. I'm going to do this. I'm going to edit this. My bug that a user has registered is when they click that and click save, they don't want to be thrown to the top. They actually want to be left right there. So if I click save, you can see after I've clicked save, I've got an access and a close and an access and a close here. All of a sudden, I've registered a whole bunch of events. And I'm wondering, I understand why one of them should be registered, but I'm not sure why one set should be registered, but I'm not sure why both sets should be registered. So if I actually click on the actual file here, there it goes. This is what I want. Okay. I clicked activate historical debugging down there, and it shot me over to the button save file click. So this is kind of what Activate Historical Debugging should do for you. It should take you to the point in time where this event was launched. And this is what you want to be able to see. So again, I can return to live debugging if I want to and get out of this historical debugging. It has this nice yellow bar on the top that tells you exactly what's going on. And it'll take you to the point in time where that event was registered. So you can actually see what was happening at that point in time. If I go down to the next one here, obviously I got a close event, which makes sense because I've made the save and it closed it, but I'm not sure why it's accessing again, reading the file and bringing it back up again. So the first time when I accessed the file and went to button save, this time I'm going to read file. So it's actually rereading the file and taking me back to the top. So I already know, I already have a clue as to, okay, this is why my saves aren't working correctly. So if I keep going to the close event and activate this guy, I'm back down here at the close event. I already know what the solution is. It's just a matter of multiple people using this file at the same time. So, and they put in this little line of code that said, if multiple people are using it, always shoot them to the top of the page. This is the solution. As soon as I do this, go past it, open my file, make a little edit and click save. Now I'm at the bottom. So again, it's a little hokey little text file kind of example, but it's just it kind of illustrates the fact that if you didn't see these two access and close events, you wouldn't know why this was happening, or you wouldn't be able to do it without putting breakpoints everywhere. Like you wouldn't have thought to go into the refile method because you would say, well, why is it rereading it when it should be just saving and closing it? So again, these are just kinds of things that Microsoft is giving you to allow you to say, these are the different events that you can do. Any questions on that? If not, we'll keep rolling right along. We've got a fair bit to talk about. So.
Can you export the list of the events there?
No, but thank you. You can, half your fingers. You cannot, but you can actually, if I click this guy, you can do a Control-C. So you'd have to do that one by one and do that.
Okay.
So that's kind of how you would get around it. I mean, that's all developers are doing now anyways, right? Just pasting stuff into Google and hoping for the best. That's what you can get out of it. I mean, you could always take a snapshot of it and send it to somebody too, I guess, if you wanted to, like a screen snip. But that is where that's where you're gonna get that kind of information out of it. There is another tool we'll talk about a little bit. It's been around for longer than most of these tools. Is start debugging with or start diagnostic tools without debugging, and it actually gives you a whole diagnostic window at the end that you can actually export and play with and do all kinds of stuff. We'll talk about that in a bit. All right. So next thing I want to talk about is perf tips. Who loves perf tips? Perf tips are the little kinds, or the little millisecond little things that you're going to see pop up here, and you probably weren't really paying attention to them as I was working through the code here, but you're going to see them in a second here. So I put my breakpoint in, I jump to my next thing, and all of a sudden I have this little thing here that says 1 millisecond elapsed. That's the perf tip. So the perf tip was, how long did it take to get to this line? Okay? How long did it take to get to this line? Even though it's on this line here, it always relates to the line above. So just keep that in mind whenever you're doing that. This little thing here with the delta with the little hat underneath, or the little line underneath, that means that there was some network latency involved. So it did a best guess estimate as to what it found, and 1 millisecond was what it came up with. If there is no line there, that is an accurate measurement. Okay, so this is kind of saying there might be some overhead involved. Just this is, take our word for it. It's around this. Okay. You can also use perf tips, and what I'll do here is on whole blocks of code. So if I want to do this, and do this, and then do that, that perf tip there was for the top 2 lines. So you can actually nest them. You can see all the perf tips you want going all the way back up. So wherever you got your breakpoints all along the way, you're going to see all that kind of stuff. And if I keep going here, the cool thing is, every time I keep running this, I'm getting the individual little events here, down the bottom here, and I'm also getting my little events up at the top here as well, as I'm stepping through everything. So, as I'm working through my breakpoints, I'm also getting my little perf tips down. So all of those are the perf tips that I'm generating as I'm moving along here. One of the things I forgot to mention, and I want to take a second here and show you, is, let's go back. I'm going to break out of this, and I want to go to this first breakpoint. Right. Oh, go back up. I just want this guy here. There are all kinds of little categories and threads here that you can set. I forgot to mention this before, but I want to show you this now. Those 2 drop-downs, all categories, all threads, will allow you to filter what is in this table here. So you can see here that I have all kinds of things that I can filter for. So I can filter for, based on threading, on user prompts, any of that kind of stuff. So if I choose to filter, if I click off all categories and I want to go based on file, because I'm working in files, I'm going to get a lot of file stuff, obviously. But if I wanted to do just, I don't know, ASP.NET and not file, oops, I only get the breakpoint. So again, the same thing happens with the threading as well. You can filter based on which threads are available so that you can scope that list down. Again, on a short project like this, not really necessary. But if you've got multiple projects under one solution and you're kind of figuring out where everything belongs and on which threads it belongs, this really comes in handy because you can really scope that down, especially if you ran your diagnostic window for maybe over 4 or 5 classes or something like that, right? And so you want to be able to scope all that back down and figure out what's actually happening. So again, couple little tips that you can actually work with to scope down your information and get to the heart of your problem right away. All right. So that's kind of what I wanted to show you about Intellitrace events and perf tips. There's one other thing I want to show you before we take a break, because we're about that time, I think, Lord. Is I'm running Visual Studio 2015, no update. Okay? I knew that I was doing this talk. I had updated before, and my diagnostic tools window was funky, and they've actually improved it because it was there were certain things like sometimes it wouldn't load or it was delayed loading, and I chose not to upgrade mine. If you're running update 1, your diagnostic tools window is going to look a little different than mine. Okay? Expressly because you can add filtering to these events. Mine did not have any of this filtering. So it's actually got a filter box and it's got a search box here. So you can actually type in and say, I want to know button click. You can actually type in button click and it'll scope it down for you. You don't need to do all that scoping down for by yourself. Or if you want to filter on any of these, so you want to filter on file or gesture or any of the events that you've chosen in your Intellitrace tools options, you can filter based on all of those. And the nice thing too is they give you a little hint at the side here. This says file 8. It found 8 events for you under file or 2 events under gesture. Those kinds of things are brand new in update 1 that I don't have on mine. So if you're wondering what was that guy talking about, that's the difference right there, okay? The other kind of thing, the nice thing too, is that they've added the categories, the prefixes to the line here. Mine does not have this. So if I had that access, open access, close, mine would be prefaced by the file, colon. Mine did not have that. But this is, again, nice because if you want to know I found one event, what are all the other events that are similar to this? I can filter based on file, bam, pull them up quickly. So again, visual cues that you can see along the way that you're going to find when you're working with update 1. So I think we'll take a break there, and then we'll come back 10 minutes or so, and then
10, 15 minutes, can take a bathroom break, get some more pizza, have a drink, and yeah, we'll resume at 6. We'll do 7:30. Is that good?
sure, yeah, whatever.
7:30.
Cool.